If I had have known what I knew now, I could have got 2 properties that gave me $1,000 a week each and had way less pain. But, we don't know what we don't know. And this podcast isn't about naming and shaming the stuff that we've done in the past or that you've done around this. It's just
awareness
so that you can plan better for your future. And, go and talk to an accountant or a financial advisor or some successful investors that that can give you some different ideas and be a collector of ideas. Like that's what Simon and I do. We take this idea from 30 different people and then we mash it up and we create something that works for us based on our risk profile, our appetites, our cash flow and our positions, as well as how much time we want to invest in it. G'day guys, welcome back to the Pumped On Property Show, or if it's your first time, congratulations, you found us finally. We're super excited about today's podcast. We're going to be talking about the common mistakes that investors make, and sharing a heap of stories about the mistakes that Simon and I have made, as well as the mistakes we've seen clients. I think we've talked to over 3,000, maybe 4,000 people now, helped over 750 people buy a lot of property in Sydney and Brisbane. And, with that, you hear lots of war stories, you hear lots of scars, you hear lots of great things, but also the things that most people don't tell you.
Yeah, seriously.
Australians love a winner. Everyone's got that mate that likes a punt and they always tell you about the win, but you don't hear from them for the couple of months where they're down. And property is the same people. Now, the reason this is such an important podcast is this year's going to be super emotional. We're not just noticing first timers rushing into markets at the moment. We're seeing the mums and dads. We're seeing the super money. We're seeing the investors. Thank God there's not the international money coming in at the moment as well. And for the first time, I think in the last 5 years, we're beginning to see the institutional investors coming back in. Simon was just telling me about a client. They're looking to come on and buy 10, maybe 20 properties with us in the next few years at the moment. They run a venture capital company. I was speaking to another young fella in Sydney. He's 26. He started off with a $10,000 trading account 3 years ago. He's now worth $15 million in cryptocurrency. He's just left his current employer who paid him out $10 million to leave. And then he says he's going to turn that 10 into $20 million by the end of the year. You've got these people making unusual gains in the stock markets in the last year, plus the crypto markets, and now they're looking for safer places to put that. And it's just a very, very different vibe. We saved over $100 billion as Australians last year, more than we normally would. That's our household savings at the moment, which is just incredible. As Phil Anderson said, I think to an email to you and his subscribers earlier in the week or last week, that people aren't just going to sit in their homes forever and people aren't going to watch these markets forever without wanting to do something. So it's important to remember there's downsides. There's also upsides. We're definitely not financial planners, but these are some of the major mistakes that we see coming for people that don't think about this stuff.
Yeah, we don't really like talking about the negative side of things. We're more optimists and like to promote positivity in our videos. So hopefully we can have a little bit of a laugh with some of these mistakes. And, I just want to refer back to, one of the things that Phil Anderson said in one of his recent updates. And it was looking at some doctor over in the US who's an economist and was talking about, the trillions of dollars that have just been entered into the world, which is going to trickle down the economy.
Printed out of thin air.
And that's cash money. That's cash money, baby.
It's cash money, baby.
And essentially, what he was kind of referring it to was back after the Spanish influenza, which lasted from 1918 through to 1921. This is where 50 million people died worldwide. It was the last global pandemic, essentially. And then after that, we came into the roaring 20s, is what it's referred to. And this is the Great Gatsby era. This is the Prohibition era. This is where aircraft started to be, commercialized, and everybody was working. Everybody was earning money. Things were looking really good. People were making bulk coin, and, emotions and partying was flying high at that point in time. And he was sort of referring to the fact that he thinks, in particular, he was talking about America can kind of go into this similar sort of phase of a cycle. And Phil always says the second half of the cycle is bigger than the first half. So when all of this is happening, a lot's going to be feeling good and people are just going to be making decisions because they can. And what we want to help you understand is avoiding the mistakes that other people have made so that you can be on the right side.
You know, I've been talking about this for a little while off camera, and what I think is happening as someone that like watches people probably a lot more than other people will is I believe that the bow is getting pulled tighter and tighter and tighter. And not just that, people are saving unusual amounts of money. The government's stepping in and spending unusual amounts on infrastructure.
Low interest rates.
Very low interest rates. The next thing coming after that is extremely easy credit and much higher confidence. And at some point, people will let go of that bow and just want to get in. Now, smart investors will get in at a time before everyone's in. But a lot of people unfortunately won't. And we've seen that in Perth before it declined by 30%. We've seen that in Sydney and Melbourne, where a lot of the buying was done between sort of 2017 and 18 at the very, very top. Those people have made no gains up until now, 2021.
Brisbane buying in 2007 or 8 and then not seeing any capital growth for 12 years.
You know, it's just very, very common. You know, people do the opposite of probably what's best for them. And we're not advisors in that way. We're just aware of human psychology, and the greed that you see in the crypto market right now is the exact same investors that will ultimately fuel another boom and bust in property and stock markets as well. So I'm super excited. Let's sort of get into the very first thing, you know, and this is the most common mistake. I sort of almost just alluded it to it then. Timing.
Yeah. So as
mistiming.
Everybody loves a winner, right? Everybody loves to back a winner. And I guess you can take Bitcoin as the prime example right now as to, you know, everybody trying to pick a winner. And it happened back in 2018 with Bitcoin, where everybody was getting in when it was above $20,000. And then obviously it comes crashing down. You know, now every man and his dog's talking about it, buying it right now. When it's, you know, super inflated. Now, we don't know Bitcoin from a bar of soap. You know, I don't know what's going on there or how far it could go or whether it is going to drop. But just the fact that every man and his dog is talking about it and getting into it, you know, to me, that is a prime example of when not to get in.
I don't like when I'm getting my hair cut, or I'm in the surf shop, or I'm at the gym, and I'm hearing people that aren't investors, that don't understand the downside risks, talking about buying, or not even buying, the gains that they're making from an asset that they understand nothing about. Like, to me, I wish I bought a lot of it. Like, I wish I bought 100K at $5,000 a pop. Everyone does. And, you know, maybe if it comes down to 15K, I will risk a bit.
That's funny. We haven't even talked about that, but my bottom line is 15 grand. I'm like, once it gets back below 15, I'll get in. And I'm talking to people and they're like, it's never going to get below 15 again. I'm like, all right, you watch.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it at all. But anyway, off topic completely. What I think we keep coming back to this Bitcoin thing is Bitcoin seems to run in about a 12 to 18 month cycle, where the real estate timing thing, if you understand history, works on about a 16 to 18 year cycle. Now, the exact same investors that create a 1.5 year Bitcoin cycle also create a 18 year property cycle. But because it's more expensive and because a lot of the market lives in it, we just don't see it the same way. And we go, well, that's housing, that's different than stocks or crypto, but it is not. People for hundreds of years around the world, actually thousands of years, have been investing and speculating. And that's where the lords, the ladies, the barons, the dukes came from in the UK. It's where all of the monarchies and all of the important families and the wealthy families invested for millennia. Like, as long as humans have been doing this, people have been fighting over the use rights to land in areas around the world. And so what happens is people speculate. It starts off slow and then it gets feverish, and people pay way too much for assets than they should. and then we get to a top and create a bottom. So as an investor, it's good to understand that stuff. You can look at Ray Dalio, Phil Anderson, Fred Harrison if you want to know more. But why it's important to me and Simon as investors is if you can understand when to buy better and when to sell, when to hold and to speculate and increase your asset base, and when to pay off debt and get yourself in a really safe position to be able to go through a few bad years, it can be the difference between like getting financially free in 15 years, 20 years versus working for an entire lifetime and ending up on the pension.
And what I like to talk to is the psychological impact of either succeeding or failing as well. You know, if you buy at the right time in the right market and you experience a few good years of great capital growth, it's going to leave a positive psychological, I guess, perspective in your mind. And, you know, that's going to fuel more investing, and which is going to enable you to actually achieve financial freedom a hell of a lot sooner. Versus the opposite, if you buy at the top of a cycle and then a few years later the property's worth less than what you purchased it for, that's going to leave a negative psychological impact on you, and you're not going to think that you can do it, which is going to mean that you're going to end up in this cycle of, you know, not trusting the system, not trusting the asset, and end up working for the rest of your life and never actually getting to that point. So there's so much more than just the money.
Without a doubt, like Tony Robbins talks about it in Money Master the Game. I was rereading that book over the Christmas break, and one of the major biases is there's not just a positive feedback loop of doing well or a negative loop of doing bad. There's actually like a really bad bias in investors that's going to come into the market very soon, which is, and happened in Sydney and Melbourne back in 15 to 17, is I've made money. The market's going to only continue to head in this direction. I've made money from doing something outside of my job, from doing nothing really. And I know the market because I've done well and I've made money, and you build up this ego like I'm a good investor because I bought then. And I've talked to people every day. How many people do we talk to that bought a great property in Sydney or Melbourne in 14, a good one in 16, and then they've got two shit ones that they bought in 18 because the greed took over and they loaded up with the wrong stuff, expecting it to continue because it was. And so just be aware of that. You know, if I think about the second thing that I think, I've made this mistake countless times, and I'm going to share a few of those stories, but buying the wrong asset. And the two most common assets that people buy wrong is off the plan units, which currently in Melbourne, in some parts of the city, have a 20% vacancy rate. That means 1 out of every 5 units is sitting completely empty right now. There's other parts of Sydney where the vacancy rate's as high as 10% right now because people expected that their beautiful, glossy, off-the-pan unit that they paid way too much for was always going to have an international student or an Airbnb accommodation in it. And they expected that, you know, like myself, tourism would never stop, that we would never have a year where there wasn't 300,000 new people moving to Australia to fill all of that excess stock. And now we've got too many units in those two cities with not enough population growth to support them or fill them.
And what we understand is that the power is in the land. You want to control as much of that land as you possibly can. Just like the old monarchs, just like the old kings and queens, they controlled large portions of land. And you want to do the same. When you go buy an off-the-plan unit with a 90 square metre floor plan, you're getting such a small portion of land from that. So, you know, you want to be trying to buy those houses. And then on top of that, when you look at the comparison of houses versus units over 25 years in Australia, which is exactly what CoreLogic did, you find that the houses have outperformed the units by 96%. You know, this isn't rocket science, right? It is just looking at history to hopefully make a more educated decision right now.
And so, you know, Simon and I were talking about this before. You know, I've owned units before. My dad owns a townhouse. Mum's owned units. We've all done really well out of them. And for those of you with units or townhouses now, there's absolutely nothing that we're saying is right or wrong about any of these things. It's just for your next purchase, or if you're a first-time investor for your first purchase, just remember that the power is in the land. The bigger, the better. The closer to the city, the closer to the metro markets, the closer to the beaches, has always won since the dawn of property as a speculative tool in Australia or America or Europe. So moving forward, make better towards where you want to be decisions versus knowing this piece of information and still going out and grabbing the next unit, you know what I mean? Just because that's what you can afford in where you live or whatever.
And the next mistake is kind of alluding to exactly what you're just saying, which is buying the wrong area. Buying really far from the CBDs or buying in regional markets. All you got to do to understand this is look in your local market, look at the most expensive suburb in that market and tell me where it is. It's either really close to the city or really close to the beach.
Without a doubt, in every single state, in every single country around the world, those are the markets that work. So, same thing, like I think CoreLogic did the same amount of research over 20 years and they found that I think it was an 86% difference. 85% difference in the metro market's average performance versus the average regional. Now, people always say to me, well, Ben, if you look at what's worked in Australia in the last 25 years, the top performing 50 suburbs have all been regional markets. And I'm like, that's awesome. I completely understand that some people picked Byron Bay or like Gosford or like wherever in Australia, like Mornington Peninsula, and those places have absolutely cranked, and that's cool. But my thought process is if there's only 7 capital cities or whatever in Australia, I hope maybe 8 is there, including the ACT.
7 capital cities. 7.
And then it's like, and of that, you only going to be.
It's been a while since geography class in grade 4, Benny.
Sorry, Miss Leontaros. Sorry, Miss.
Sorry, Miss.
Sorry, Miss. But, and then for me, it's really only a Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane decision versus, whatever 20,000 other places in Australia that aren't those capital cities. I don't want to pick the pin out of the haystack. I want to pick the absolute winner. And for me, I'll just follow the averages. It's the same as I'll only buy houses from now on. I'll only buy Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, or the surrounding regional markets around it. And that just makes it easier as an investor because most of Australia doesn't make sense to my plan. So I don't have to learn about it. I don't have to stress on it. I don't have to worry when Hobart does 70% growth in 7 years. Oh, I should have gone and put some money there. I don't even consider it because long term, I know the Sydneys, Melbournes and Brisbanes have smashed its average performance, and long term they will because that's where the population's going.
Yeah, prime examples of this sort of short-term regional speculation is during those mining booms. And you see these mining towns where the median house price will go from $250,000 or $300,000 up to $700,000+. The weekly rental amount will go from $350 to $1,000 a week, and people love a winner. So they're like, I can't lose here. They jump in too late. And we've heard some absolute horror stories of people in regional Queensland, regional WA that unfortunately got unstuck. So speculating is dangerous and can be really hard to nail it on the head in terms of timing. So as Ben said, working with the law of averages and just going for that longer term outlook. And that's what we're doing. We're long-term investors. We're not trying to get a result over 12 months, 2 years, even 5 years. We're looking at our longer term position 10, 15, 20 years in the future.
Without a doubt. Now, another one that comes up and has definitely come up for me in the past, I'm going to skip one and then come back to that if that's cool, bro.
Of course.
Is no plan. I went out and I bought my first probably 6, 7 properties without even really knowing what I was doing or where I was trying to get to or how those properties connected to that. Now, it ended up resulting in a unit in Sydney with really high strata fees. The guy ended up going to jail, I just found out, because he fucking was ripping everyone off with the strata fees.
There was like 500 units in that complex?
Yeah, there was so many units.
Gosh.
And the fees went from like 600 a quarter to like $3,000 a quarter. This guy was apparently just pocketing it. I didn't even know.
I just knew sketchy people out there.
I just knew that they were really high, but then we were walking past it the other day with my mate and he's like, that guy ended up going to prison? I'm like, no, thanks for letting me know. Like, there's another thing I can tick off my like property lessons box.
I love it though. You've had so many horror stories, but like your resilience is so on point, hey?
Yeah, you just got to have a laugh at it all and keep moving. But, I ended up with this unit, then ended up with a house in the regional market, which was a good one, but probably not at the best time. I ended up with another house in a regional market. Then I started to go, I'm bored with buying established houses. I'm going to get on the house and land bandwagon. I went and built four houses. That was my next thing without a plan. 300, 200, 500 square meter piece of land instead of the nice big 600s that we should be looking for. Plus, and I just, because I could borrow the money, I just went and spent it. And so many people we work with are earning 80 to 800K. Like so many people are doing well out there, and banks are like, hell yeah, I'll lend you for whatever you want. And without a plan, you end up in the position that I did, which is, shit, I've just heard this from CoreLogic, this from SQM, this from Phil Anderson, this from Ray Dalio. I'm 7 years down the path and I'm actually no closer to financial freedom. I know long-term I'll be wealthy if I hold it for the rest of my life, but I've got all these little kids now and I want to be spending my life with them. I'm not prepared to work 50 to 60 hours a week anymore. And it was actually like it was like an ego death. And I talked to this chick yesterday. She's got a property that she knows she needs to sell. She's a new client and she's like, I don't want to admit that I've done the wrong thing. And I'm like, I've been there. Like, no one wants to admit that, hey, like maybe what I've got isn't the best for me, but there's so much like time bias invested in it, which is deadly. And so I'm one of the few people that I've ever met that went, I've done the wrong thing, but I'm young enough, I know the right thing. I sold 7 of the 9 properties that I owned. And then I've just slowly in the last 3 years built a portfolio on a plan. Now my plan is I want capital growth. I want to time the property at the right time of the cycle, and I want great cash flow, and I will not budge on any of them because I've had 7 properties before that cost me 30 grand a year and it's stressful as hell. I'd prefer 3 properties that provide me 30 grand a year positive income. And so that redirection with a plan, and to get the plan is so simple, man. Like, how do you talk to people about that?
All you do is understand, where you want to be in the future and reverse engineer that back to what you need to do in order to get closer to that. So, for us, we start with, okay, well, let's look at our lifestyle and how much it costs us to live a lifestyle that we're going to be happy. And most of the time, that's just your income. The income that you're earning at the moment. Most people have the ability to live a good life and also put some money away in savings. So maybe you look at your current annual salary and go, okay, well, I want to replace my annual salary in the future so that when I no longer want to trade 40 to 50 hours away from my family or from my hobbies or from my life, I can still earn the income and have the life that I want to lead. So it's essentially as simple as that. So let's say you're earning 100K per year at the moment. You create a plan that enables you to acquire a number of properties, own those properties outright within a certain period of time so that when you do own them outright, they're replacing $100,000 a year worth of income.
It's so simple when you say that, but no one was talking about that when I was getting started. And
if you don't know, you don't know.
You don't know. And so I sort of thought, okay, well, maybe if I want 100K, I can get I thought 7 properties at $300 a week would get me there. You know what I mean? That was the math that I was doing. And if I had have known what I knew now, I could have got 2 properties that gave me $1,000 a week each and had way less pain. But, we don't know what we don't know. And this podcast isn't about naming and shaming the stuff that we've done in the past or that you've done around this. It's just
awareness
so that you can plan better for your future. And, go and talk to an accountant or a financial advisor or some successful investors that that can give you some different ideas and be a collector of ideas. Like, that's what Simon and I do. We take this idea from 30 different people and then we mash it up and we create something that works for us based on our risk profile, our appetites, our cash flow and our positions, as well as how much time we want to invest in it.
It's almost like a puzzle, right?
It's a full puzzle.
Like you end up with all of these pieces and you're like, holy hell, what am I meant to do with all of these pieces?
And there's no edge on the puzzle, so it's not an easy one, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So you just slowly but surely start to put the pieces of the puzzle together and all of a sudden you create this beautiful image. And, that's essentially what this property journey is going to be. You're taking bits and pieces from everybody, but then you've also got to keep your values, your goals, your lifestyle at the heart of all of this, which is so individual. So, you can take advice from people that have done it before and you can watch the YouTube videos and the podcast, but essentially you've got to just sit down and do the personal work yourself and figure out, who do I want to be? What do I want to have?
And the biggest thing for me with the planning side of things was, it changed. Who I wanted to be was like a Gary Vee. Like, if I'm really honest with myself 10 years ago, like, I wanted to impact as many people in a positive way as possible, get super wealthy because I felt like it would put the hole like that I felt in myself together, which it doesn't, FYI. You know, I wanted lots of properties. I wanted lots of lifestyle. I wanted lots of stuff because I didn't know any better. Like, that's what I thought success looked like. And then I realized when I had kids, what I really wanted was a good headspace in the afternoon when I come home. I wanted to be present. I want a long, happy, healthy life with people I care about. Like, I want to be friends with the people that are in my circle that like add value and meaning to my life. I want to like do meaningful work. And we've actually made the decision to cut the business back from a lot of clients each month to an extremely small number now, because we want to connect and have a personal relationship with those small number of people. And it sucks because like you walk in on a Monday and there's like 10 emails from people that are like, we want to get started. You don't have any sessions online. And it's like, you know, but it's also like those cool people that values align with what we're trying to do come through. And those 10 people we get to help at the moment are just incredibly aligned with us, and it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, and we've realized that it's not about how much money that you earn or how much money that you have, but more about the people that you choose to spend that time with. And you know, we're still trading time away from our lives to help people and do what we love to do, which is such an awesome opportunity. But at the same time, you know, we understand those values, and now we've decided to cut those back so that we are just working with amazing people, and so that we've got more time for you to spend with the kids, for me to spend with my partner, to go, you know, reconnect with friends that, you know, sometimes when you're in full work mode, those relationships fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what we want. We want a fruitful life for ourselves. And that's why, coming back to this plan, if you have that plan, you know what you're working towards longer term, and you know what you need to do to achieve that, gosh, it's a good feeling.
You know, the most common thing I probably hear out of everything, and, you know, we've honestly had about 4,000 combos now, maybe even more, is I feel like alone on the journey. Like, so many people feel that way that we speak to, and I felt it for a long time as well. Because they don't have the advisors around them that they can call. They don't have anyone in their life, like especially a lot of the young families that we work with and a lot of the young guys and girls that we work with that are below the age of 45. Like, a lot of people only figure out investing later, and that's so cool. Like, you can still do a lot. But for the people like us that are like, we actually want choices really soon, and we don't want to like be a slave to the man while we get those choices either. It's like, it can feel super lonely, like no community, no one to talk to, no mentor, no coach, no buyer's agent, no advisors. And it's like, you know, and so for those people, like, we hope to become, I suppose, you know,
somebody that they can connect with. And it's a good thing about the YouTube videos and places like Property Chat, where people can actually connect a little bit easier. But, you know, continuing on to that, it's not just not having the community, but sometimes when people don't have the community, the types of conversations that they're having with their loved ones and their best friends, their family and best friends are telling them not to do what they want to do because it's so different to anything that anybody has ever experienced in their particular community. So it's like the compound effect in the other way. Which makes it even scarier to gain the confidence to do what you need to do.
So, you know, like in terms of human psychology, when you care about someone, you'll do anything to protect that person emotionally from pain or traumas that you've gone through. And that's what we do as parents. That's what we do as friends. That's what we do as grandparents. That's what we do as mates. And it's actually like counterproductive to having the life that you want, because now I realize at the time I didn't. I used to try and have these combos with my mum and my dad when I was buying my first few properties. I was so excited. I had no idea. I had that like ambition and naivety that everyone has when they get started, like it's only going to work out. And they were saying, well, it's not and you shouldn't. But what they were really saying, I now know, is I don't understand this and I'm fearful for you because I don't understand it. I'm trying to protect you.
Yes.
And so partners that are blocking you, whether that's your husband, your wife, your partner, whether that's friends, whether that's family, they're not doing it deliberately. I now realize they're doing it because they don't understand, and because they don't understand, it's scary, and they're trying to love you and protect you and show you that. And it's like, I see it with parents all the time now that I obviously have my little kids. They think they're protecting their child by like constantly cutting them with these little things all day, every single day. And all they're doing is like cutting the soul out of that little beautiful person that's already fine, that just needs some guidance, some boundaries. Knowing that now is cool. You can do what I did, which is stop talking to anybody about it, and just get great information from really successful people and find those mentors that are prepared to make the time for you, and just be a sponge and figure it out yourself. Or you could just recognize that like not everyone's going to be stoked on the journey, but at some point they'll see the results, and the results definitely speak for themselves when you've got lifestyle choices to make at 45, you know what I mean?
What I always say to people that don't really have that community, or somebody that's really dragging them down, is buy Rich Dad Poor Dad and go give it to them, because it will change their life.
Without a doubt, I should have just said that. Yeah, that's an easy starting point.
It's such a simple starting point to help people stop thinking the old way and start thinking in the new way.
You know, people that have extraordinary lives learn how to save, and they learn how to invest that savings into something that's going to replace their income in the future. It is no harder than that. And people that don't have choices, that end up miserable, are the people that just don't take that discipline at some stage to actually do that. And I know that sounds brutal, but it's the reality. If you want an exceptional life, to have choices, then at some point you have to recognize the system that we're in, and that you need money to survive in it. And the sooner you want to exit the matrix, like the sooner you have to be a part of it to get out of it. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing.
I love it. What I say there, if you want something that's not normal, you've got to do something that's not normal.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And, you know, the next thing that we want to talk about, you know, really comes from the first two, which is no plan, no community. What a lot of people do because of this is they rush in, because they get emotional, because they're not getting the support that they need from the people that they want it from. They rush in and just go, fuck it, I'm going to go just buy something because, you know, I don't want to deal with this BS anymore.
Yeah, and I've done that so many times. Like the bank said I could borrow, I just went and bought something because I wanted something, and I thought another property would be enough. I talked to the best guy recently. He signed up for our business. We had this incredible plan that was his, using a couple of houses and a couple of granny flats to get him, you know, about $70,000 a year worth of income today, and about 100 grand in 15 years time. He was on the path, and then his mum and dad, who were based in Hong Kong, had a unit in Sydney, and they said, I'll sell it to you 10% cheaper, which I believe was still 10% above what it's worth right now. And he thought he was getting a bargain. Mum and dad thought it was a good idea. They thought they were helping him out by giving it to him cheaper. And what they've done, this guy's earning 70 grand a year and he's just bought a 600K asset, is completely cut off his legs for the next 10 years. He's got to pay down the debt to just be able to borrow money again to think about investing. And they've trapped their child unknowingly into an asset that's going to take him 30 years to get financially free instead of 15 or 20. Now, that again comes from a place of love, but it's just like he rushed into that decision, even with all the logic as one of our clients. And I was like, here's the metro story, here's the unit story, here's where Sydney's at in its cycle versus what you're planning on doing in Brisbane. But emotions overtake. Everyone likes that winner. 10% below market value sounds like a good story to tell your mates. You know, and
having your own home in Sydney sounds like a good story to tell as well. And it's just, yeah, it's coming back to the understanding that, you know, you need to have a plan. You need to know what you need in order to achieve your goals in the future, and you need to stay laser focused. And it's going to be a boring ass journey as well most of the time. You know, there's going to be
slow.
Right now it's super fun for me. Super fun because I'm in the acquisition phase. I'm buying, I'm renovating, I'm doing all this fun stuff. But, you know, it's at some point in time, because property is such a long-term asset, it's going to get boring. So I was mitigating those emotions throughout those down times and down years. And, you know, when everybody's winning and the market's going up so much in that winner's curse phase of the cycle, avoid getting emotionally attached and rushing in and buying the wrong stuff at the wrong time and then coming completely unstuck.
For sure. Now, what does the wrong time look like statistically is an important thing. The wrong time looks like when everyone's been making really easy money for a long time. The wrong time feels wrong when the butchers, the bakers, the hairdressers, the personal trainers are all speculating and buying property. The wrong time feels like the wrong time, and you know it in your gut.
It's funny that you say, because I was about to say, like, knowing what we know now, the wrong time feels like the right time.
Fully, yeah.
Because everybody's winning, everybody's talking about it, it's fun, everyone's excited, but that's the wrong time.
And the right time to be a true buyer really only comes around every now and then.
Yeah, probably once every 10 years.
And so what we will say is, like, my approach to investing is simple. It's the Warren Buffett way, and it is buy and hold assets long term. And he says it's time in the market for the average person like me. Like, I'm not going to be a zillionaire. I just want a simple little life for my family, and that's all I'm working towards. But it's like, you can just, if you're happy to buy and hold for the next 45 years, then anything you buy at any time is going to be worth a lot more at that point. It's just, if you want to create something extraordinary, which is choices sooner, like we both do, then overlaying some of these things and avoiding some of these mistakes is important. But I just want to say that, like, people are obviously better off investing than not investing in the right stuff. It's just like, I'm an analytical dude that gets off on this stuff. I love learning about it. And so if you're like us, it's like, why not do the next one or the first one a bit better?
Yeah. And for us, it's not necessarily about the averages. We want to try and beat the average.
I'm not trying to be the average investor.
It's different, it's a different way of looking at things and maneuvering through the market as well. Now, one of the other mistakes is overcapitalization, which we all do. I
thought I was sitting in it, but thankfully the market's gone up a bit.
Yeah, it just happens. I did it with just such a small little renovation. Like, it started off with a $10,000 budget and quickly becomes like $25,000. It's an emotion. Like, emotions really take over in those instances. And if it's your own home, I kind of think it's fine, because it's your own home.
Yeah.
You should be in a place where you're super happy. But if it's your investment, you need to make sure that you're really being strategic about it.
Now, I've done that on my investments, where I've spent way too much. Like, in my first unit, for example, I thought it'd be really nice to have a new kitchen, bathroom, and polished floors and stuff throughout. So we spent 20 grand and the rent went up by $10 a week. I never saw that money back that I put into that. And it's like, so people would have paid the $10 extra a week for just me to paint it.
Yeah.
And so now it's kind of like, I'd love my whole portfolio to look beautiful. Like, I would love that. My ego would love that. And it would be awesome from a maintenance perspective too.
And doing renos is fun.
Renos is fun. Spending the cash isn't that fun for me. I'd rather pay off the debt and get a passive income. But it's like, I'm just at that stage now. For example, like, I've got a place in Brizzy that I'm looking at the moment to reno, close to the city, that I bought in 2016. I really could replace the roof, rip the entire internal floor plan, which is a shocking floor plan. Like, I'd never buy it now knowing what I know now, but I've learnt since then about floor plans more, and redesign it as a 3-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms, similar to like what you've done with your place, like make it sick. But to do it at mine would be so much more expensive than yours, because it's not brick, slab on ground, and easy to knock out any internal wall. It's like really complicated.
Walls.
So I could spend $100K easily making this place sick and get $70 a week of rent, which means that I'm never going to get my money back in this lifetime. Instead, I've chose to get this amount of stuff done to make it nice enough for the next 10 years and all the maintenance done. Carpets, floor coverings, blinds,
light fittings,
lights, fans, like all the maintenance-y stuff, and a paint job plus some flooring. And I'm like, that'd be enough, way more than enough. And instead of getting 70, I'll get 60 a week. But I've only had to spend 15 grand doing it.
And sometimes you got to understand that, always you got to understand that, there's almost 27 million people that live in Australia.
I don't even know, eh?
The point that I'm getting to is that just because you want something, it doesn't mean that everybody wants that. So you may want this beautiful home and beautiful place that only the top end of the market really wants and would like to live in that. But, there is a whole bunch of demographics and people that need a bit more affordable housing options that would just be more than happy to live in just a nice, tidy 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that doesn't cost them 60% of their weekly wage to live in.
You know, what I've learned through this like coronavirus thing is affordable housing is always got a place.
Yes.
Quality housing also always has a place. It's just, do you want to be appealing to 5% of the market, or do you want to be appealing to 70% of the market? And so I think about that, and that's why I love dual income personally. Like, as a business, we help people buy really high quality blue chip stuff on the beach or close to the city of Brisbane. But we also have a second strategy, which is you buy a home, you build a tiny home with it, and you know, that dual income type vibe. You know, if I lose a tenant, I've only lost 50% of my rent. I'm still able to cover most of the cost of my mortgage with the second. Also, it creates a passive income stream, which I can use to live off, create choices off in the future once I own that property outright as well. So for me, there's lots of ways of getting to that place.
And for me as well, like, I like the fact that I can provide affordable housing accommodation for people that can't yet afford to buy their own home.
For sure.
And that's always going to be the lower end of the market as well. And that's something to be really proud about as well. You know, the fact that you're putting a roof over somebody's head.
Without a doubt.
And, you know, we always talk about the investment side of things, but, you know, that is a big part of why we do what we do, because, you know, you're supporting families and putting a safe roof over their head. And you know, that's probably something that you need to really understand and plan about, and not be too stingy on the things that you do, or when there's maintenance items that do come up, or when, you know, they do hit financial hardship or something like that, just being a little bit more compassionate. I know it's kind of off topic to the mistakes, but it's like,
it's the truth too.
It's the truth. You know, you're doing really good things by investing in property, and yeah, there's the financial benefit there, but also helping people is a good thing.
For sure. Like, it's at the heart of everything that you and I try and do. And, you know, I've seen it. Like, I've seen the benefit of someone having someone that actually cares about them in their life. Like, you forget how hard some people are doing it sometimes in like the bubbles that some of us are lucky enough to live in. And it's kind of fully remembering that. Like, I'm creating this granny flat in Brizzy at the moment. My tenant in the main house is like, we're basically custom created this thing for him. He's in retirement. He's just the most beautiful man. He wants to move down there. It was perfect for him to like simplify and slow down his life. And it's like, he was really engaged with us in like the designing process, the colors, the way that we did stuff. And he's going to caretake the property for me. Like, I'm going to pay for his water for the next year, and I'm going to get him to really water in the grasses and all of the plants for us. And like, I know for a fact he'll keep a complete eye on what's going on in the front home for me too. So it's like that human element, when I first got started, to be honest, was not a thing. I was like, invest, brutal, there'll always be another tenant. And now I'm like, these are people. I rented for 10, or not 10 years, but about 7 years of my life. Like, life is way too short to only care about the progression. Like, there's a whole other side to this, which is beautiful, and it makes you feel really good. Like, a bunch of my properties now, 3 or 4 of my investments have solar panels. Like, that's an important thing to me, to create a lower impact house and for the planet. And I'm really aware of the way that I design things for functionality and also for like efficiency, just because I want to have a positive impact, like on the way that I leave the world for my kids and stuff. And also, electricity is a massive expense that people just don't need when the sun can provide it. It's like, yes, it might not be an ROI for me for the $4,000 it cost me to put the 5 kilowatt system on, but it's like, when I advertise for free electricity, twice as many tenants for the 4K, and I can charge them an extra $50 a week because it's included as a cost. It's
and you generally get higher quality opportunities then as well, because you've got a number of different people to choose between.
For sure.
So I think good to recognise that, you know, we're probably coming into some insane times that most people listening to this have never experienced before in their lives. And there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. So, you know, spend the time that you need to figuring out your investment strategy, your investment plan, where it is that you want to be in the future. You know, understand that everybody makes mistakes. It's natural. You know, don't get knocked off the horse and start walking. Get back up on there and keep on riding, because, you know, things are going to happen. But like they have to Ben. You don't let these cripple you and hold you back for the rest of your life. You address them, pivot, move forward.
Completely. Like, I'm super excited about everything coming. I wish you all the best. And as always, please stay safe. Investing is incredible if you're patient like we are, and it can be very, very dangerous if you're not. I've seen that myself firsthand on my own properties. And so, you know, just learn from these mistakes and move forward in a confident way.
For sure. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. If you can give us a like and a subscribe, that'd be amazing.
And also, if you are listening through the podcast, 5-star review time. That means more people can hear it, share it with someone. We'd really appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, sweaty. So sweaty.